Sure. Let's talk about MapQuest, speaking of off-brands. I mean, MapQuest is a site that is still the leader in mapping. It's lost some share to Google over the last 10 years or so, but it's, the long-standing leader, lots of traffic. It's also made lots of moves to redefine itself over the last few years with respect to more personalization, social features, business search, rather than just driving directions. How are you utilizing that as a place, not only a front door, but also to kind of push a lot of local content?
Well, MapQuest is, even though it's a local property, it sort of falls outside of my business unit, right? So Christian Dwyer and Mark Law, who are sort of the brain trust there, are really doing a great job. I mean, they're essentially trying to change engines on a plane while it's flying, right? There's a lot of revenue demands that come from MapQuest, and so they have to innovate and build that experience and expand on it, but while keeping an eye on revenue, right? Google has a different, they have a luxury around Google Maps that MapQuest doesn't have in terms of revenue. But Mark Law in particular, with launching Local Quest, was essentially a local portal. It has a lot of great AOL content, but it also has a lot of content from other folks such as Yelp and whatnot. So they're open for business too in terms of doing partnerships. So they're going to continue to innovate. They're going to try to maintain their leadership position. And I would just look for more exciting things to come. I've seen their roadmap. They've got some really interesting stuff coming. So,
I don't know if anything to add on mapping. I mean, Yahoo Maps was up there with MapQuest as one of the kind of leaders in local and in mapping a long time ago.
As a standalone, we were clearly outflanked in Maps by Microsoft and Google, resource-wise. So the way we look at mapping opportunity-wise is to create a very powerful end-to-end experience that begins in web search, integrates local, and maps as well. So when we talk about localizing web search, that experience really just begins with the shortcuts that you see in the search results page. But of course, users click through, they want to dig deeper, they want to qualify merchants, they want to see that information on a map. The use cases are pretty complex. So from our perspective, it's more of an experience play, and we have the assets we need in mapping to make that happen. And that's kind of our principal focus, which is in contrast to trying to get the latest, glitzy-looking item in mapping, whether it be Street View or something like that. I mean, that's not how we're trying to compete against our primary competitors.
So both of your overall networks are known for the large amount of revenue they're pulling in from display advertising, and display advertising is something that we're seeing being negatively impacted in lots of ways, partly because of the current state of the economy. Does that put more pressure on you guys as local properties and as closer to the point of purchase, where a lot of directional advertising has traditionally taken place, to really be more of a revenue source for the company as, again, display ads go down?
So it's a good point. I mean, if you're in the local search space as we are, you're obviously less reliant on display advertising. In fact, for our primary local.yahoo.com, it's single digits percentage-wise revenue. So we're not very dependent on it at all. That being said, given the current climate, I mean, we are very focused on revenue and monetization and growing that, and growing our revenue per search, so on and so forth. So we're clearly an anchor for the company in terms of the current revenue we bring to the table. I think from Yahoo's perspective, since we continue to make big bets in search, one of our core objectives is to localize search from an audience perspective and see the secondary benefits of that in terms of more geo-targeted sponsored search volume and inventory. So that those two things kind of go hand in hand and are very important to our strategy. Of course, we launched geo-targeting at a deeper level of it last year, and we continue to see increase in uptick on that.
Now, do you see an opportunity to do that not only at the kind of latter stages of the purchase funnel, where there's an explicit either search with a geographic modifier, but really just implicitly entering local content and advertising further up the purchase funnel in research stages, to basically include local content about where things can be bought, even new data sets that are coming into the market, such as inventory, things like that. Where do you see both the opportunities like that?
Well, I definitely would say that's a huge opportunity from a user experience standpoint. I mean, I think we've all gotten a little bit too addicted to transactional type experiences within local, where we know exactly what the user is trying to get done, and to your point, it's kind of the last step in this phenomena of research online by offline. And the higher up you go in the funnel, the more the user is really focused on merchant research, merchant qualification,
right,
comparing one vendor against the other, so to speak, looking at deeper attributes. So a lot of the things that I was referring to earlier around the complex intent and the more sophisticated behavior we're seeing in search are really a reflection of that,
right,
where the user is saying, hey, I don't know where I want to eat tonight. Here's what's important to me. It's a menu item. So maybe it's location as one parameter, maybe it's a menu item, so on and so forth. So help them conduct the compare and contrast and get through the funnel. So that's mostly how we've thought about it. Now I can see clearly a growth in the kinds of monetization opportunities that exist off of that, and those would probably be related to things like helping merchants get more of their information out there.
Sure.
And I think we would not be a principal in that area. We'd really look to leverage resellers and people that have direct relationship with the merchant community to help them sell, to help them enhance their listings, for example, on the web.
And that lends into the SEO strategy as well. Chris, any thoughts there?
Very much the same. I mean, display is not a large percentage of our business, so we've been able to sort of weather the downturn pretty well. I mean, our revenues are growing. That said, we're prepared in terms of how we build out our display infrastructure in our properties, that when the upturn comes, which we hope it will, that we'll benefit from that. So it'll just be another layer on top. So a pretty good story.
We don't have a lot of time left. Are there any audience questions? I believe there's a roving microphone somewhere. Well, I'll ask to kind of end things off. We all alluded to the new leadership at each of your companies. Care to talk about just briefly how that will affect the kind of overall local strategy?
Well, it's all pretty new for us, obviously, and we're pretty excited about it. It's our understanding Tim is a big fan of local, so we would expect that we will have even greater focus, which means that hopefully next year, when we're back at this conference, we'll have even more stories to tell about our success and more partnerships. So.
Atif, closing thoughts?
Yeah, I can't say there's anything specific to local with Carol coming in. I can tell you there's a lot of excitement and enthusiasm, rejuvenation at the company, at the employee level. So we're certainly excited about her onboarding. From what we hear, just to piggyback on your comments, I mean, the local opportunity remains one that we haven't tapped into as much as we can. And from what we hear at the highest levels of the company, they also share that opinion. So we expect continued commitment to local and potentially even playing more broadly in it than we're currently positioned.
Sure, and one way that ties in there that we probably don't have a lot of time to get into is the Newspaper Consortium, major local initiative at Yahoo that brings in lots of interesting opportunities, content and advertising, and utilizing newspapers' core offline assets and bringing them online. Perhaps that's a conversation for another day because we're out of time. But please join me in thanking these great individuals for joining us.